Hello and welcome to the celebration of the publication of the collaborative poetry book, Prayer Gardening. I'm Kathleen Cassen Mickelson, here to kick things off. My co-author, Constance Brewer, will join in when we start reading. Prayer Gardening is a collaborative work, so we wanted to spend a minute talking about that before we dive into reading poems from this book. Poets are usually solitary creatures, so why would a poet want to collaborate? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. Perhaps there's something about another person's work that we really admire, or perhaps two artists or writers already work well together in some other way. They maybe have shared backgrounds or interests that lend themselves to creating work that feels like it could fit together. Maybe it's just opportunity and the word yes. For Constance and myself, we have known each other since 2009, when we were both on the staff at the now defunct daily poetry journal, Everyday Poets. Once that journal folded, we decided to start our own journal, Gyroscope Review, which kicked off its first issue in 2015. We worked together as editors of that journal for 5 years, and then I rotated off, and Connie has stayed at the helm of Gyroscope Review, and we brought on new editors together before I left. And now we are working together on poetry collaborations, which we've found we really enjoy. We started collaborating with just one line. I don't remember anymore which one of us gave the first line of poetry, but one of us did, sent it to the other and said, hey, let's do a line-by-line poem, see what happens. So the other one of us wrote a line in response. We went back and forth until somebody said, hey, I think this is done. And then we moved to going stanza by stanza, then poetry, poem, answering poem. And then we experimented with different forms of poetry, sonnets and rengas and abecedarians and American sentences and all kinds of stuff. We had a great time. Then we decided to edit what we had. We discovered a lot of things about each other in that process. I'm a pretty concrete poet. Connie refers to herself as an abstract space cadet. I love that description. So sometimes we clashed in the editing, but most of the time we balanced each other out, kind of like yin and yang, and we learned from each other. We made each other better poets. Connie nudged me to be a little less concrete and let my poems fly off into space sometimes. And I nudged her to come back to the ground every once in a while and anchor something. So we complemented each other, we improved each other, and we kept right on going. We found all this shared territory as writers, both of us raised as Catholics, both of us leaving that faith eventually in our adulthood, both of us experiencing divorce, and both of us parenting 2 children. We also share politics, political views. We also gain our inspiration from and find many metaphors in nature. That particular thread is one that's really evident in our collection, Prayer Gardening. So with all of this collected evidence that this book could happen, I'm going to dive into reading poetry, and we really hope you find something you love here. Oh, and I should mention that these poems are not in the same order they appear in the book. They're all from Prayer Gardening, but our voices, we have learned, talk to each other in a lot of different ways. So we mixed up the order with these poems that we're going to read to you, and they still converse really well. So enjoy. The first poem is a poem about absence and about love. It's called Mad Rush. My throat closes as you leave for work. I watch the dog cock her head when you close the door. Listen to our wind chimes break in the morning quiet. I want my children back in this space, their once high voices startling the birds, their bare feet slapping across the kitchen. I want my dead father back, sitting on the deck, a beer beside him. I want it all to slow down, this mad rush that has only one off-ramp that no one wants to take. Love for this life, for the people who have moved through it, fills me, spills from me. I think of my mother, who would have adored the lilacs exploding behind my house, their short-lived time used up, offering everything without a second thought.
My first poem is also a love poem, and I don't usually write love poems, at least not the big grandiose statement ones, because sometimes it's the little things. This is Love Poem with Accolades. It's hell growing old. You age out of flattery. No one tells you you're pretty anymore. The athletes you watch play ball could be your grandchildren. Somehow, young waitresses now call you honey and dear and sweetie and point you to the senior special. In my head, I'm 25, no more than 32. My body has a different perception, but it strives to do all I ask. And then there's us. We've been together far too long. You don't say, "Hey, beautiful," anymore, but nor do you notice the increasing silver strands in my dark hair. Yesterday, you bought me a new lamp with LED bulbs, bright enough to knit black yarn by. Maybe you saw me struggle to count my stitches. Maybe you hate the heavy cheater glasses I need to wear. Either way, it's beautiful what you did, and I have to remember to tell you so. Each day together is a compliment.
The next poem is a poem about being content. It's called Night Poem Number 1. A shooting star arced across the eastern sky, broke into bits beyond our neighbor's trees. The dog took no notice, wondered why I went back toward the street when she had no more poop to give. I tugged her leash, insisted on looking up to witness meteoric flash, flash, flare, out. I wanted more, but the only other movement was our neighbor jogging in the dark. I thought of you then, your plane over the Atlantic Ocean. You would touch down in Europe while I slept. I wasn't sad you headed to Italy without me. I was sad I was home without you, half of our bed cool to the touch. Travel doesn't compel me like it once did. Contentedness makes it easy to send roots deeper and deeper. Tonight, fall crickets sing the same notes over and over without tiring. The dog nestles beside me, turns and turns until her bed is ready, plops into a semicircle, her breath soft, her trust in me complete as I turn off the light.
The next poem is also about contentment, but in a little bit different form. I grew up in a Catholic household, as Kath mentioned, and I got to go to Catholic school after being in regular school all day, sort of like in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the heroine has to go to Greek school and learn all about being Greek. So I used to get in a lot of trouble for asking the nuns questions like this one. Shape and form. No one clarified Catholic obsession with the soul, how it would travel without me after death to a fairy tale heaven of blinking light and cloud after forcing its way free of my deathbed body. If I can't explain this dichotomy, it isn't real, the way you are not real unless you slip beside me in the rush of night, brush careful fingers over the arc of one bare shoulder, and sweep my soul back into my body where it belongs.
I love that poem. And I too had Well, I had catechism after school when I was growing up, once a week. This next poem is one that was published a couple of years ago in the Cosmos Journal. It's been pointed out to me in no uncertain terms by my kids that I really like to feed people. It's true. This is called Before You Set Your Table. The small oranges on the counter are wrinkled. You cut one into eighths, toss it outside beneath the bird feeder. You wait, but no one comes. It has been below zero all week. You read about chickadees, how they run hot, stay warm, masters of survival. They are why you offered black oil sunflower seeds in the feeder yesterday when it was 10 below. You believe the chickadees know you. Sometimes you think the crows do too. They ate all the leftover stuffing one morning when you scattered it around the backyard. The oranges are for the cardinals. You heard them earlier, recognized that whistle they have when it's time to start this year's family. They'll need whatever sustenance you can offer. When you look out the window again, a few orange pieces are gone. You wonder if the squirrels got there first. It doesn't matter. You're here to fill any empty stomach. Hear the hunger beneath every song.
So being part Italian, I like to feed people too. I am incapable of cooking for less than 10. So that gives us a lot of freezer fuel for the two of us. But I also extend that out to the wildlife. They need to eat too. This is my poem, Morning Worship. She goes outside in the early morning to put seed in the bird feeders, wearing sweatpants and unlaced work boots, flannel shirt, a jacket if it's below 20, peanuts for the squirrels, a scoop of sunflower seeds, millet, corn, and if she remembers, cakes of energy-rich suet. A chickadee calls from nearby, zip dives down to perch on a branch near her head, scolding her to hurry. Red-winged blackbirds in the cottonwoods serenade her presence. She fills the bird bath with warm water, finds beneath the body of a dead dove. Not enough lingering feather tufts for a cat sacrifice. A red-tailed hawk would have flown off with the prize. Tenderly, she wraps it in plastic, disposes of the quiet thing. This is her self-assigned duty to tend the flock. Every loss a pang, every cheerful song a sermon on love. This is her church, her choir, her reason to rise in the morning.
All right, this next poem comes out of a daily gratitude practice that I have, where I have a habit of finding beauty in things, often first thing in the day. This is called Things That Awed Me This Morning. A cool breeze through sheer bedroom curtains before I arose. The dog's small body rising with each inhale as she snuggled next to me. Pearled skies before the sun was all the way up. 5 pigeons, wings spread across the dawn, swooping and diving together in silence. The smell of prairie dropseed in the front garden. How that high school kid laughed at the dog as she barked and barked at him. His smile when I said good morning. The flash of a white squirrel's body against green grass. How pure, how holy. Those wind chimes on our deck that sing and sing and sing.
That's my favorite poem of yours in our whole book. I love that poem. And now on to the Space Cadet portion of my reading. This is where I go off on a tangent, as Kath said. This poem is Lazy Evening Interlude. Tonight at dusk, we lounge in lawn chairs, watch the moon rise over the back fence, pale light caressing the blooms of garden flowers, stroking them to sleep the way a parent lulls a reluctant child to rest. My glass of wine deepens to black. Sparkles of Orion twinkle the surface. I drink the night, sip by sip, as the rabbits sneak out, long teeth snipping the fronds of garden carrots. We watch, hushed by the moon, drunk on the shadows, waiting for stars to call us home.
And I wouldn't consider that poem a space cadet thing. I would consider it a beautiful way of looking up. So I'm glad you read that one.
Space is what awes me, so it goes right along with yours.
Absolutely. Okay. This next poem is about aging gracefully, kind of, and about owls, because who doesn't love owls? We had a pair of great horned owls that used to nest every year in our neighborhood. And my partner and I would hear them early in the morning when we would go outside with our dogs. I love that sound. In February, when owls hoot. Two owls cry, call, and response in the white pines across the road. Hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo-hoo. I imagine them, feathers ruffed, beaks touching, dreaming of owlets. We dreamed of our young once. Now our vanished youth tugs at our chapped, lined skin. We long for impossible time travel. Let us then think of the owls, snuggled together as we are, expectant, hopeful, singing.
My next poem is about birds also, one of those things we share our love for. And I grew up doing a lot of hiking in the New York woods. Even in the winter, there was something to see, something to make an early morning wake-up call worthwhile. This is Messengers. My gaze rivets on the cardinal, scarlet streak at dawn. He follows me through the woods, flits from branch to branch, warning me off his domain with a two-part whistle capped by a trill. I am the intruder in his winter bear world. My boots crunch snow and puffs of breath hang above my hand-knit cowl of alpaca and wool. The redbird follows me to a leaning sugar maple. Ahead, another trilling song rises. A red-ruffed rival welcomes me to new territory. His olive-tinged mate darts overhead. I'm not sure what I've done to attract such undivided attention. Brash guardians passing me from zone to zone, my little winged heralds. Lore says cardinals are harbingers of good fortune, and it must be true, because my good fortune is to share a hike with myself, the glittering snow, the comfort of redbirds shepherding, winged emissaries, envoys from above.
The last poem of mine that I'm going to read also has birds in it. It is definitely a theme. But this is a poem about motherhood, about how we choose it, why we choose it, if we choose it. It's called After Easter. Eggs wait on the counter, perfect brown shells smooth in morning light. Water heats on the back burner. I hear birds through the open window on this unseasonably warm day. Chickadees and sparrows fight to nest in the green birdhouse in the crabapple. I hope the chickadees win. Their sassy calls delight me every time I step outside. My own nest is too quiet of late. My daughter-in-law is pregnant, shared the news with us yesterday on Easter. I imagine the swell of her belly, the tiny feet that will kick her ribs in hot summer months while she waits for this child to form. I imagine the now dividing cells becoming something closer to a person, transitioning to independent being. I remember my first pregnancy, unplanned, how frightened I was. Motherhood is all about sacrifice. Sometimes your child is scooped up by another's hand before it's formed, cartons of brown eggs hard-boiled for someone's breakfast. It's good this only applies to chickens. Sometimes you abort the pregnancy, withstand others who second guess what you've done without mercy. Sometimes you welcome the child. Let the child change your life forever. You are a vessel cracked open. What you sacrifice isn't always for love.
My last poem is also about motherhood. When my kids were in elementary school, my mother would fly out from New York and spend the summers helping me out with the children. And it took me years to figure out why she loved it so much, coming out here to stay with me. This is my poem, Summer Vacation. The back deck held stray feathers from feeder birds preening on the rail. Mom sat at the patio table, smoking and doing crossword puzzle books in ink, pen inserted to mark her place. Sticky sweet buns, hot tea, things to pass the time while hiding out at her daughter's out-of-state house. Her husband, grumpy with outrage, would call once a week to ask, "When are you coming home?" "Soon," was always the answer. "Soon." From 1,500 miles away, her reply worked until September, and a reluctant departure for a house that no longer functioned as a home. Afterward, the puzzle book and empty teacup stayed as still life on the deck until red and gold leaves fell. In her empty chair, a flight feather, as if she just stood and winged away. So I'd like to close up for us by talking about collaboration from my point of view of what went on. And collaborations can have many goals, and some people do it for fun, and it definitely was fun for me and Kath to do, but it's also a good jumping off point for trying out new poems and generating work, and we sure did that. It can get a poet out of a rut and give them something to look forward to, and I always look forward to seeing what Kath cooked up and what I could do to answer what she was talking about. A desired kick in the pants. Seeing how other people tackle a topic can be really liberating. It gets your mind churning with possibilities instead of stuck with, I don't know what to write about. Collaborating with Kath started out as a fun exercise for me. I wanted to know how this concrete poet, my other half, got her ideas, did her work, approached topics, how she executed a poem. I wanted the, wow, I never thought of that moment. I did get a lot of, huh, that's different when I read her work. It really made me think about if there's another way to approach the poem other than the methods I was using. And yes, there was. Part of the fun was our lines talking to each other as poems unfolded that we worked on together. Sometimes they shouted at each other. They each wanted to be dominant, but there's a give and take at play between us to come up with the best poem under the circumstances. So we kind of had to push down our egos and go with what the poem demanded, not what we demanded. We started off building a poem line by line, as Kath was saying. Here's my line, hand it off like a football. Here's my line, pass back and forth. The unexpected twists and turns were really exciting and kind of nerve-wracking for me because things didn't always go the way I expected. And I didn't know if that was good or bad at first. Was I forcing her into my mindset with some of my lines? Was she forcing me? Or were we just coming to a mutual agreement, which I think is how it finally shook out once I got more comfortable with everything that was going on. When we got to exchanging stanzas, things got really interesting. It pushed my thought process into a different mold. I had to consider what Kath said before I could have my say. So I had to reform my mindset away from how am I going to push this idea to how can I make this idea meld like prayer gardening did? How can I make this stanza talk to the one before and give Kath an opportunity to have her following stanza talk to mine? twists and turns happened, but so did the times we were in sync with each other. Anyway, we collaborated. It was good to let the poems sit and gel a while before we revisited them, just like all poetry. Sometimes we look at a poem and say, that's not working. But after a brief rest, we found out we really weren't so far apart after all. And I like doing this new thing. I like the excitement it generated for me as a poet. And I might end up taking off in too many directions at once as a collaborator, something that probably drove Kath nuts. A collaboration partner has to be sensitive to the fact that not everyone works like she does, and you can learn from it. And it's a really good reminder because sometimes I forget the world doesn't revolve around me. On that egotistical note, back to you, Kath.
All right. I think we've got enough material to keep going for many years to come as collaborators, which would make me happy. So there we go. Good. Then we're on. Before I end the video here, I just wanted to hold up Prayer Gardening and let everyone know where they could get a copy. Our publisher is Kelsay Books. Here it is. I don't know if that's in focus, but anyway, kelsaybooks.com, Kelsay, Kelsay, is where you can go to find Prayer Gardening and purchase a copy. And that's the easiest way to do it. So with that, we hope you did find some poems to love here, and we hope you snag a copy of this and find many more. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And yours in poetry.
Thank you.